for all of the webinars automatically every time. So a few questions came in through the survey when you signed up. I'm going to hit those first, and then I'll get to all the ones that are coming in online here. Somebody asked about how I can make my guest a co-pilot that's sharing stories instead of answering questions. Well, hopefully the content that I just presented to you will give you some a little bit of a spotlight on that. Instead of it is a conversation. You want to have a conversational delivery, but you are asking questions. I hear a lot of mistakes that personalities make when they think that I'm just going to have a conversation with this guest, and the guest doesn't really want to have a conversation with you. It's hard to engage them in that conversation without asking questions. So the key is to ask questions the right way, and ask that best question first, and then practice those 3 skills: listen and respond, mirroring, and labeling as follow-ups. And that'll get you into conversational feelings rather than having an actual conversation. But the conversation has to start with a question. Somebody asked about conversation starters. Do you have a list of them? Is there any good way to get a conversation going and to make the guest feel welcome? Yeah, Stern is great at this. Stern and Dan Patrick's great at this too. They're the 2 best radio interviewers in the industry, in my opinion. Listen to Dan Patrick's sports talk show when he has a guest on. He's absolutely terrific. His questions are simple, they're direct, they're warm, they're always what and how questions, and they're delivered conversationally. Stern has a rhythm to him, and there's an article up on InsidersRadioNetwork.com of what makes Howard Stern the king of all interviewers. Go check that out because he's got a rhythm to his interviews. You'll notice when Stern starts something, the first is a softball question. Hey, look who's here. Look who's coming in all looking great and lost 20 pounds. Man, it's so good to see you and have you here. He welcomes them and makes it feel non-threatening. And then he follows that very quickly with a softball question that gets them talking about what they're doing right now. And then the third question is usually where he starts into the real meat of it. So there's a rhythm to Howard Stern's interviews that gets into it quickly, but also establishes that rapport with his guests. So it's a really good article and some good information there about how you can get some conversations started. Finding the aha moment. How do you find it? How do you get to it? So I think it's partly knowing what you want in the interview before you start it. I mentioned that at the beginning, that you've got to have a goal. What's the objective? What's that guest coming on for? You can't just bring them on, start talking to them, and hope something good happens. You've got to have a plan for how you're going to get to something good, even if you don't know what that something good is going to be. You still have to have a plan for it, and then be able to recognize the cues when there might be something there, and that's when you bring out your techniques. You bring out the mirroring and the labeling, and you ask them to go a little bit deeper by expressing an interest in what they're saying. So if you can mirror and label, a lot of times you get to that aha moment, and the aha moment is almost always when the guest says something that they've never said to anyone ever before. Conflict. Somebody asked about, a lot of the guests that come on are only coming on to promote their book or to promote their movie, promote their website, promote their product, and they're not really there to entertain. How do I deal with that conflict? Well, I think it's recognizing that, and it's also controlling the conversation. You've got to be conscious of the reason that they're coming on. They're not coming on just to make your show better. They're coming on to pitch something. So let them pitch something, but do it in a way and manage it in a way where you're controlling and managing the conversation, and you get out of it what you want. You are absolutely at a conflict there between promotion and entertainment. And it's a negotiation between those two things. So you can have it both ways, but it takes some skills to get to those points. A couple of questions are coming in online, and you can type them in the box at any time if you have any questions you would like me to address about interviews, about what we've talked about today, or about anything else. Question is, how do you deal with interviews that are dropped on your lap quickly, like an hour before you go on, or even while you're on the air? It's happened to me a few times, and I hate it. I assume that you mean interviews that are dropped on your lap by someone internally, like the general manager or the sales manager who comes in and says, you got to have this guest on. I'm not sure if that's right, Don, but I'm assuming that's the case. It's pretty rare usually when a celebrity or a guest calls and says, I want to be on your show in an hour. That's very unusual. Usually the publicist plans quite a ways out with that. So I'm going to assume I would just say no, that we absolutely can't do it. I think that if you go to the sales department, to the general manager, and to other department heads and be reasonable and say, yeah, I understand that we have to do some of these things, and I'm going to make these segments as good and as entertaining and as productive and as powerful. I'm going to sell that message the best way that I possibly can. And in order for me to do that, there's a few rules that I have to be able to follow. Number one, I need some lead time to be able to schedule it at the best time possible so we can get the most exposure for it. Number two, we need to record the interview. Number three, I'd prefer to do a video recording because it's going to make it more famous. We're going to be able to put it up on our website. We're going to let them watch it on demand. There's all kinds of benefits we can get from that. And number four, they need to send me some information ahead of time. I've got this checklist that they need to fill out. And if I don't get it 24 hours before their appearance, I really can't put them on the show and do a good job for them. And you don't want him to come on and do a bad job. You want him to come on and really sparkle. So if you can negotiate that. So if you can go in and say, and act like you're really excited about putting these guests on the air, even though I know you're not, but be enthusiastic about it, but with some qualifications. You might get better cooperation that way. You might not, but it'll give you a better chance. And you know what? If you can get 2 or 3 of those things going your way, it's a win. Scott says, what's the best online platform for uploading interviews for a guest to link to? First of all, I would make everything that you upload online a video, even if you don't have action video, even if it's a still. You can have still pictures, and there's a couple of apps now that are terrific. You can take a bunch of different pictures and stitch them together and then export them to any technology you want. I will have to go and look at some of my links. Chuck Taylor had told me about that. So Chuck, if you're on the webinar today and you can remind me of what that app is, it's terrific and it's free. But videos get shared a lot more. Videos get watched a lot more than audio does. So I would absolutely upload it to a video. And the best platforms to upload to video are probably YouTube and Vimeo, because you can embed from both of them. So I would upload it to YouTube. You get an embed code, you get the link, and then just put it up on your website. You can also put it up on social media. You can also load it directly into Facebook. So you get some Facebook sharing that way. Christy says, do you find when dealing with bands that it's better to be prepared with music questions or lifestyle questions, which helps us get toward a story filled with personality more quickly? I think it depends on the band, Christy. A lot of times the band wants to come in and talk about their music, and if it's a band that nobody's heard of, nobody really cares. So it's a boring interview unless they really have a great story about it, or you have an interesting story, or you're able to draw out an interesting story about their music. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. Now, if you get a major superstar, that if you get interviewing Bono or Madonna or Lady Gaga, then it might be, you can ask a Howard Stern type question, like you asked Paul McCartney. How did you write this song? Why don't we do it in the road? So it really comes down to asking an interesting question. If you've got a band that nobody knows about, that nobody's heard of, the best thing you can do is bring their personality out. It's going to make them more accessible. It's going to make them more interesting, and it might interest the audience in their music. If they're not naturally very interesting. Sam says, any ideas for interviewing a guest who's on the show every couple of months? Ooh, I've got a couple of stations who have a sales client who comes in every week, not every couple of months. And I'm telling you, it's dreadful. Control it, confine it, make sure that they're as entertaining as possible. The more you can integrate them into the flow of the show, instead of changing your show to interview them in those cases, it's better. If you watch Ellen and how she deals with guests, she'll bring Tom Cruise on and they'll play a game of Heads Up, or some of the other games that she plays on the air. So if you've got that, maybe you create a benchmark or a feature that every time this guest comes on, this is what we do. we play this game. So it gives them a reason to come on that's entertaining to the audience. And hopefully they're at least a little bit interesting and entertaining, and they can add something to the flow of the content. And it's not just stopping down for a couple of minutes for them to talk about their lemonade stand. So integrate your guests into your show. Don't change your show to fit into your guest is the best advice I've got for that. Let's see if there's any other questions. Scroll through. Tom says, stingray killed Steve Irwin. Yeah, you're right. I forgot what it was. A crocodile, stingray, crab, lobster. But yeah, Steve got killed in the ocean. And that goes back to the Barbara Walters interview that I played for you. I think that's all the questions that are on the screen. And so unless anybody has any last minute things here in the next couple of seconds, I think we'll leave it right there. I've kept you for over an hour, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. I look forward to doing the next one with you on August 28th, The Art of the Tease. Make sure you sign up for that. You can sign up at insidersradionetwork.com. It's available for you now. Thanks, everybody. You have a great rest of the week.